Alrighty, guys, let's talk about episode 4 of one of my favorite shows of 2024 thus far, Skeleton Crew. I know it's early to be saying that. I think we're only about halfway through the show. Is there 8 episodes, 7 episodes? Anyways, we still have a long way to go. But man, oh man, do I love this show. So, anyways, I've been stalling for a little bit. This is a full spoiler discussion for Skeleton Crew episode 4. If you have not seen episode 4, no worries at all. Just make sure to save this podcast segment or video, whatever, medium you're watching this part on. And just save it for later and then come back to it once you have. Let's talk about Skeleton Crew episode 4, full spoiler discussion. Guys, I've said this before in my previous Skeleton Crew spoiler discussions, but this show is doing something for me that really no other Star Wars or even very few Marvel shows have done for me is get me super invested in the characters. Now, for those of you who have been watching the channel, you guys might know what my favorite show of all time is. It's Friends. And yes, I know, not every single episode of Friends, not even every single season of Friends is amazing because, it just dips in quality sometimes. Like, it really peaked in seasons 4 and 5-ish and 3, 4, 5-ish, and then it started to go downhill. But the reason it still is holistically my favorite show really doesn't have anything to do with a decline in quality. It's the characters. These are people that I became attached to. These are the characters that made the show go, so far that I could watch almost anything they do just to spend 22 minutes with them every episode, right? That's what keeps you going. That's why sitcoms are so successful. And look, it's totally great if you can write a great miniseries or a great limited series or a really great narrative plot-driven series like, like The Penguin. I talked about this in my immediate reaction where, yes, I'm not emotionally attached to any of the characters in that show. Maybe Vic, but even Vic, I was like, oh, Vic, come on, when he made his turn. But yeah, I'm not emotionally, attached to any of those characters. But it's such a great show because of the intrigue and the drive. But again, there's, it's not a show that I'm going to rewatch because, I want to spend more time with Oz. I'm just more fascinated by what he's going to do next, right? But on the flip side, sitcoms and now Skeleton Crew are examples of shows where I watch because, yes, the stories are interesting and I think the plots and the drama and the emotion is also interesting. And Skeleton Crew, the action's fun and, it's a Star Wars show that has an interesting mystery at the center. But it's the characters, guys. What this show did so well. Look, I like Din Djarin for what it's worth. I think he's interesting. I think Ahsoka in the live action show is fine, just not super attached to her as a character there. I think, no one in the Acolyte particularly stood out. Or I think I like Cassian, but I think it's less of, I'm finding myself emotionally attached to him and just more, I think it's interesting what he's up to. But this show, Wim, Fern, KB, and of course our beloved Neil, and even Jod a little bit. Jod is he's kind of warming up to me. I'm sure there will be some kind of second act or third act twist where he betrays them at some point and then comes back to rescue them. Like I'm sure that's coming because that just happens in these kinds of shows. But these characters are awesome. The kids are cast fantastically, and so because of that, episodes 1 and 2 loved. Episode 3 loved, and Owl aside, loved. But we head into episode 4, and the question that will really dog me, for every single one of these episodes is, can the show continue to keep up the momentum? Because I don't know. It almost feels too good to be true that, you watch these shows and you're so used to Star Wars shows ending so poorly that you're like, I don't know. Can it keep going? And look, I don't know how it's going to end, but episode 4, I really liked. And I will say this, and we'll dive into the details of the episode in just a second here, but just to kind of give some more overall thoughts, I will say, Episode 4 was a little bit fillerish in a weird way, and you guys know if you've been watching the channel for a while, I'm not a big fan of these filler concepts, right? In The Mandalorian, I feel like just the story and the concepts of these episodes, rather, it's just not for me a lot of the time because there's very little attention paid to the overarching story in some of the episodes. My mind goes to the Frog Egg episode, or it goes to the episode where it's not even in The Mandalorian, it's like Book of Boba Fett, where he goes to Tatooine and sees Amy Sedaris' character, and she's like, you gotta go find me this part, come back and get me the part, and you can get your ship. It feels very video game-esque, side questing. Also the Jack Black episode, it all feels very kind of side questing, sometimes. But this episode, again, it kind of fits that mold, and any other show where I'm not attached to these characters, I would have been very annoyed with it, honestly. But these characters, I can just watch do anything, and on top of that, it's not just like the entire episode is a side quest, because there's still enough there where you're like, okay, interesting, like at Atten, you're still getting hints of it. So we're on at Akron, not at Atten, and at the end of the show, obviously with the whole SM-33 bit where he turns bad, and apparently he was on this planet before. I think that's setting up another really interesting mystery of who the old captain was. I'm sure that he'll probably end up being the villain of the show. I wonder who he is. Maybe he's dead. We never know. Maybe Jude Law, is the villain. We never know. Or we will find out, rather. But we don't know right now. So anyways, I think that, this episode, while yes, it was a little bit of a diversion, I care too much about these characters at this point that it makes me happy just to see them and to spend time with them. So, and also all the things that, the series has been doing well so far. This episode rather continues to do well, like the music, which is still delightful even from the beginning. I love the music, the visuals, the tone, some of the dialogue, a little cringy, a little on the nose, but they're kids, and I don't know, it's just something about the kids. You just kind of go, but they're kids, right? Like, I know Neil's whole speech about why can't everyone just be friends would have come off as so cringy and so cheesy in any other world. But in this one, when Neil's the one saying it, I'm like, I'm on board, Neil. You keep going, you keep talking, and let's all be friends here. So now let's actually dive into the episode itself. Took some notes here, and then we'll talk about it more on the other side. So first of all, we start out in space here, and they're heading to a planet that we think is at Aden, but of course, as we were starting out the episode, I was like, no way. There is no way it's at Aden. There's no way that they're back home already. And sure enough, this planet is not at Aden. And is it another Old Republic planet? Maybe? Well, the answer is probably yes, because it's at Akron. And turns out at the end of the episode, we find out in that tower that there are a bunch of Old Republic planets. And maybe they're Old Republic planets, but, planets in the same system, right? And Aden is somewhere in this system as well. I wonder if the rest of the series is just going to be them going to these different planets and just trying to find at Aden. I don't know. I don't know how coordinates work in Star Wars if you can just do that, like walking around a neighborhood. Is it like walking around a neighborhood or walking around a city? I have no idea, honestly. But anyways, they run into these kids who are called part of this, I guess, group or clan called Troik. And I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of odd. The whole, just the mannerisms and the way that this group was, operating and the way that they were acting is like kind of odd. But you just kind of go with it. And they're fighting these soldiers that we don't really get a whole lot about. I'd be more interested, honestly, if this episode were a little longer to get some more lore about who these soldiers are and what the war is that they're fighting, because we don't really get a whole lot of that in this episode, which I guess in hindsight is not the point, because I was, at the beginning I was asking like, who are these guys? But I guess it doesn't really matter, because then they're rescued and they're taken to this place with a guy named General Strix. Again, these characters, other than the daughter, whose name starts with an H and it's escaping me, Hayna, I think that's her name. The one who Neil talks to a lot, which is so cute, by the way. Anyways, but I mean, the characters themselves, I guess, are not super important. It's just more of the adventure that they're going on and all that stuff. So, in any other show, I would have been complaining about this being filler, all this kind of stuff, like going on a side quest and going to meet these people or whatever. But I love these kids, and I don't know. I feel like the leash is so much longer. I said this in my immediate reaction for this show, because I could just watch these kids do anything. Now, if you keep just filler episode after filler episode, then I'm going to be a little annoyed. But I think that we are still continuing to drive the story forward in a sense, and I think that's good enough for me. I'll watch them adventure anyways. Neil giving his food to the kids, Neil talking to, I'm going to call her Hayna. I don't know if that's her name. But Neil's walking with Hayna and he's giving his food to the kids, and that's so cute. And Neil is just so pure-hearted. He's so beautifully optimistic. He's talking about the fact that on Aden, these buildings are schools and there's peace and everyone is working for the great work, which again, a little bit of indoctrination going on there, a little bit of propaganda, right? We'll see. I have more thoughts about that as we get to the supervisor's tower, or the tower that represents the supervisor's tower on Akron. But anyways, he's so beautifully optimistic and naive, and I love that about him, and I think that Hayna recognizes that from him as well throughout this episode. And I wrote this in my notes, and I kind of mean this half jokingly, but I also just mean this genuinely. The episode is just winning by Neil and Neil alone. I think otherwise I'd be a little bit bored. I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, I was just imagining as I was watching this episode, what if these were adults and just the same things were going on? And I was like, yeah, I'd be a bit bored, honestly. But I mean, it's Neil, and it's these kids rather, and I think that that's just awesome. And so kids are training a little bit, and then they're forced to go out there and fight and represent the group, because I guess that's part of the deal. And they go out into the fog, and Neil is scared, and just so cute, so cute. and Hannah decides to go with them. And of course it was Jod who comes back through the fog. I knew it was Jod just because you're not setting up all this drama just to have these kids fight actual people. I just didn't think so. I knew it was Jod because also we didn't, Jod just kind of disappeared. Now, what was interesting was because of, the fact that they cut away from him when he was surrounded by the soldiers as he was talking to SM-33, and then they cut away from them, I actually was wondering, okay, so are they, again, hinting at the fact that Jedi, maybe he used force powers to get away from it, and they don't want to reveal exactly what happened there just yet, but it turns out there's a very simple explanation for it, and he just used the credits to buy these animals for the Troik people. And again, I think maybe that's telling in itself, the force powers, are they ever going to come back? Are we ever going to explore the fact that he claims he's a Jedi? I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see about that. But I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's very, very interesting. And then they go, so that's like, 80% of the episode. And then this is the part where the show actually picks up its, a storyline, which is getting home to Ad-Adin, what's going on in Ad-Adin with the treasure and whatnot. And so they head to this tower, the supervisor's tower, or what would have been the supervisor's tower on Ad-Adin anyways, which I still think this whole supervisor thing, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, I was thinking about this. I wouldn't be surprised if the supervisor, whoever he, she, they are, is not the captain, the old captain, and they just kind of ended up on Ad-Adin and is hiding out somewhere. Maybe. We'll have to see it because we haven't seen the supervisor yet, I don't think. And we also haven't seen this old captain yet. And this old captain was after some kind of treasure on Ad-Adin. So I think a lot of mysteries still to be revealed. What is the great work and all this kind of stuff. But these aren't mysteries where you're kind of like, oh, I'm so frustrated that I don't know the answers. These are mysteries that you're like, I can't wait to find out what happens and how they're going to be tying into the story later on. I think that's such a great thing. Guys, this show, I can't believe how much I love the show. It's something intangible, some intangible quality about this show that I can't quite explain compared to other Star Wars shows. But as long as it continues this trajectory vaguely in quality, this is going to easily be my favorite Star Wars show. It's not even close. But again, don't, try not to get too ahead of myself because it could all go downhill from here. By the way, forgot to mention the Daniels, who directed Everything Everywhere All at Once, directed this episode. I am, I posted a review of Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if I'll probably watch it again at some point. I don't know if I was in the wrong state of mind or whatever, because everyone loved that movie. And I thought, it's fine. It's okay. And maybe I'm just crazy. But their direction is obviously very different and very assertive, and they fit right into the Star Wars universe. They had some very fun shots though at the end of this episode, especially with SM-33, the kind of point of view shots, right? The kind of horror movie shots where he's the camera is basically right in front of him and his head's moving around and all that kind of stuff. I think that's also interesting. And I think that, they made their stamp on this episode, but they also fit right into the Star Wars universe. So they find the coordinates, and the coordinates are gone, and SM-3 was the one who took them out. And we get this revelation that Fern first of all has this kind of moment where she's doubting herself, and I think it's sad, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, you understand why she got so mad. Again, dialogue a little bit on the nose, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And then so she realizes that he was instructed by the old captain to not talk anything or say anything about Ad-Adin, and then she does an override, and then we get the horror version of SM-33, and that it's really scary actually, and the camera work well done, really well done. And I love the POV shots because they're just super interesting to me. Very different from what we're used to from Star Wars. And but side note, by the way, as I'm remembering now that because as Jod is getting ready to protect the kids, he I think it's so interesting how the kids are beginning to quote unquote imprint on him, because right after he rescues them later on from the Troiks, they Neil and Wim give him a hug, and I think that's interesting. I wonder. I'd be so curious to get more information about his character soon and sort of reveal like where he came from, and is he a hardened criminal, but then maybe is he starting to soften? It's a very, it's a Mandalorian kind of Yoda Mandalorian kind of trope, but I think even more so here because we get to actually see his face. And Jude Law, by the way, is awesome. Jude Law is so great in the show, and I love it. And then, the show ends with Neil fainting. It's, it's my least favorite episode of the 4, but I really liked it, and again, it's the kids. I just can't wait to spend another week, for the next few weeks with these kids and with Jude Law, and seeing where this adventure goes. This show has again done something that no other Star Wars show has been able to do thus far, and I've just been so impressed by it. So guys, that was my spoiler discussion for episode 4 of Skeleton Crew. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments down below. Are you enjoying the show, or maybe you're not, not enjoying the show? Let me know either way in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts there. And are you excited for the next episode? Let me know in the comments.